The first item on the agenda, proposed Greenbelt NASA Trail update. I'm not sure if Jeff is here.
Hi,
Hey,
Michael.
Jeff, how are you?
Are you ready for the Greenbelt East Trail?
I am. Yeah, we've got a pretty full agenda, so we want to keep our discussions pretty brief, no more than 15 minutes if possible. But I want to thank you for agreeing to speak again at ATAG, and congratulations.
Thank you
And
very
the floor is
much.
yours.
Thank you. Is it okay if I share my screen?
It
Or would
is.
you prefer? Okay, let me see if I can get that up and running here. So while I'm getting that up and running, the Greenbelt East Trail is a concept that's been around for a long time. We've talked about it in prior meetings, but we've got some good news from the Maryland Department of Transportation. That they are now interested in doing a feasibility study. And that's great. And it will take some time, I'm sure, to get that, going. They said, their preliminary timeline was, the by the end of the year. And what I'm, that's nice, but I'm trying to move it even faster than that. So I don't know if you can see my screen, but um,
Yes.
what we're concentrating on, and I'm going to just circle it with my cursor. The first phase we're trying to get expedited. So the idea would be to get this section between roughly about here where the woods start. This is on Route 193 on the north side, over here to Good Luck Road, to have that be our first section. And ultimately, the vision is to go all the way down to the splash park where the WBNA trail begins and heads out over the soon to be completed new bridge to Anne Arundel County. And then on the west side, we were thinking to build the trail down to Eleanor Roosevelt High School. Google says there's bike facilities in this region where the 193 crosses the Parkway and the Beltway and 201, but that's essentially false. Those bike facilities aren't either real or they're far too dangerous to actually use. So we're assuming that the people would get to the Anacostia River trails by going over the Spellman overpass over the Parkway and then along the bike lanes on Crescent Road, Ivy Lane, and Cherrywood Road to get to Lake Artemisia and connect with the Anacostia River Trail system. And I apologize, I've got a very barky dog in the background, but hopefully that's not too distracting. But what we're trying to do next, now that we've got MDOT to commit to a feasibility study, is expedite this sector 2 in front of NASA. I think it's about a mile and a half long. There's only two intersections really at the NASA current main entrance here and at the new entrance at IceSat Road. And so the whole cost of doing this, I think, since the trail, sorry for all the scrolling, the trail essentially, oops, let me just scroll to the top. The trail, the right of way looks like this. I mean, for the most part, it's just a 10-foot wide shoulder with plenty of room to put in curb stops and flex posts. And so, what I've done to get sector 2 moving is got a cost estimate for just that sector. And I think really the only costs are about a mile and a half or about 500 flex posts and 500 truck quality curb stops. Um, and and then possibly some raised crosswalks, not raised crosswalks, excuse me, raised bus stops, and possibly some curb squaring for right-hand turn ramps in a couple locations. But we think this is well under a $500,000 project, even or about a $500,000 project or less, even considering contingency. And of course, these cost estimates are coming from me. I'm not an engineer. I'm just using the MDOT, spreadsheets that they produce to give rules of thumb. But our idea is to try and get this sector 2 moving as quickly as possible. And I don't know exactly how to do that. I'm going to go to a seminar tomorrow about the Safe Roads for All grant, which has a deadline in July, and see if we can persuade either the county or the city of Greenbelt or Park and Planning or somebody to apply for that. I think the chance of that is well, I'll find out more about the details of that grant and whether a nonprofit like Friends of the Greenbelt East Trail can do the application process, in the hope that State Highway or the county or whoever would take the ball and run with it if we win. It could be that the state can apply for that, the State Highway Administration. But I'll try to find out more about that tomorrow on the Rails to Trails seminar, and then I'll call MDOT this week and find out what they think of that idea, if they have an opinion, and just see if we can get that trail running. Because, you know, if we can at least get this section built in front of NASA, that'll provide an immediate safety benefit for the Roosevelt students, for the NASA staff, and for the Duval High School students, and just provide a connection, because this part of Greenbelt is pretty bike accessible because we have the overpass and we've got new restaurants. And let me go over it, maybe see it over here. There's a new grocery store and there's a lot of new housing over in this area that really can't connect to all the other parts of Greenbelt. So hopefully at least getting Sector 2 underway will help the process. And I've got a sample letter that we've written to help community groups write and urge MDOT to expedite that. And people can just go for it. You know, there's a click button right here on the website to get a copy of that. And I'm hopeful that NASA staff and others can work on that. And then, of course, we have the you know, my little back of the envelope slides for what the trail looks like in that section, with more detail that are available. So I'm going to scroll down to the Sector 2 area. And this is kind of what it looks like. When you get to the city limit of Greenbelt, the sidewalk ends, and that's when the trail would go on the existing shoulder all the way up to past one of the worst bus stops in Prince George's County and possibly the state, and all the way up to NASA and past their first intersection and on up to the NASA second main gate, and then past another pretty lousy bus stop up to, excuse me, I'm scrolling the wrong way, up to Good Luck Road. So that's our goal, is to, now that we've got on MDOT's attention, the next step is to try and get them to expedite this section. And our pitch is there's only two intersections, there's no right-of-way issues, there's no driveways to navigate, and we're using flexible materials. And if something turns out that we didn't know about and it's wrong, we can always pull up curb stops and flex posts and do something different. You know, there's no need to study this to death before we get started. So with that, Michael, thank you. And I'm happy to take questions if people have.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeff. I'll throw out the first one while I have the floor. What did SHA say their timeline was to complete the feasibility study?
So the letter didn't say, but according to the staff, they said by the end of this year. But I also learned that there's several other feasibility studies in the works, and that the staff who are working on it have limited resources. And, you know, it's the same old story where the bike and pedestrian stuff gets done by one or two highly dedicated people, and you know, there's not a lot of redundancy. So hopefully we'll get started this summer and finish by the end of the year.
Wonderful. Any other questions?
Yeah, I see some questions in the chat. Let me just scroll back a little bit. Is the path intended for two-way bike traffic on that on-road lane? Yes, it would be we're envisioning this as a two-way trail. I don't know if you can still see my screen, but in the realm of, you know, sort of this design that I'm circling there, with which is actually a protected bike lane in DC, a protected bike trail in DC. So that's question from Coraline. And Anika has a question. I used to, okay, so that's not a question, just a comment. All right, and I see Peter from SHA is invited, and let me just say that so far we're working with SHA's Innovative Contracting Division, but the District 3 office has been engaged as well. And we spoke with Derek when we did our community walk last year, and I'm hopeful that that they can continue to be really nice and supportive like they have been so far.
One more question, Jeff, that I have. SHA requires a minimum width of 10 feet for a two-way pathway with 2 feet of clear space on either side. Do you anticipate they have that much width within the existing section that you're showing?
What's the 2 feet on either side? Because there are some sections that have like guardrails. So SHA owns the right. Oops, sorry. SHA owns the right of way. But there are also, let me go over back to the street view. There's plenty of places where, back up a little bit, like in this section here, that might be 10 feet, but there's not 2 feet of additional. So do you know the context of that 10 feet rule?
Right. The 2 feet of shy space is needed so that people can have the full usable 10-foot width. If there is a wall or some other vertical obstruction and immediately next to the pavement edge, users will shy away from that. So your 8-foot, your 10-foot section becomes only 8 feet because of that shy space issue.
I'll have to look into that, Michael, because that's the first I've heard of it. And I think we have a 12-foot shoulder in most places, but it could easily be less than that in some places. So I hope that doesn't become a problem, or that we can find an easy workaround. And I didn't know that the 10-foot was a rule as much as a guideline, because an 8-foot narrowing, they do that in DC all the time in tight spots, and it seems to work fine. But as a matter of fact, I've seen them go all the way down to 6 feet in one spot next to the Harris Teeter on a trail, where there's a place where they needed extra room for trucks to pull out, and people just have to kind of alternate and be careful. But maybe that's just DC. I'll have to make sure that that's not a deal breaker out here for Maryland.
SHA will be able to figure it out.
Yeah.
Anyway, you can just, a lot of these cases, you can just pave a little bit more and solve it that way.
Or that, I mean, I presume the SHA right of way goes well into this off the side of the road. It's just that there might be a guardrail there or something that could provide a conflict.
Yeah, I had a question on this. I've wondered is, there are some pedestrians now on that side of the road, not many. Is the bike lane, and is that presumed to be a pedestrian walkway as well, or will pedestrians, are they not supposed to be there?
Oh, no, it would be a shared use path. So it would be, the idea would be welcoming to walkers, scooters, and the whole thing. Yeah, because there's no sidewalk, and the bus stops are inaccessible currently, so it would be a shared use path. And
it's characterized as a shared use and not as a bike lane. That's what I wasn't clear on.
Correct. At least in all of my talk, we've characterized it as a shared use path.
Because on the other hand, if it's a bike lane, SHA will maintain it, and if it's shared use, it's harder to get them to commit.
So
go ahead.
This is Peter Campanitas from SHA. Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Peter.
So I guess a couple of things that were laid out. What was shown earlier, that example in DC, that would be more characterized as a cycle track than it would a shared use path. Especially if it's marked the way that it's marked. If it's not marked, then we might be somewhere in between. The second thing is the second concern is with the buses and the bus stops. It's a little bit more than just slapping down, either flex posts or quick curb to divide the lane and stripe it. We're likely going to need to do a couple of different treatments in addition to that if we were to move forward with the project. And that is a floating bus stop, which we're not, necessarily, we're open to that. I mean, that's one of it's a treatment that has been, that was used recently on, in Montgomery County on Middlebrook Drive, on Middlebrook Road in Germantown. And then the other thing to consider is the bus itself when it stops. So it is likely that we're going to have to do something to beef up the right lane in order to ensure that the bus doesn't sink.
Oh, interesting. Fascinating. Yeah, the floating bus stops have been also used, just so you know, in College Park on Rhode Island Ave, in front of the Hollywood Shopping Center on either side, and they're absolutely wonderful. That's where there's sort of a raised place so that those are just great. So we have a local example of those now too. I'm not sure if the state still owns that road or if it's gone over to College Park, but it's a really nice treatment. And as far as the heavy weight of the buses, I hadn't thought of that at all. That's fascinating.
Well, that's why there's a piece of that shoulder has concrete on it, and it's for that specific purpose, so that the road doesn't buckle. And we've had issues with that in other locations. So we would likely have to do, I'm speculating here, but that would be one of the things that would need to be evaluated before we, were to pursue anything of that scale.
Gotcha.
Thanks, Peter, for that. That's very much appreciated and welcome. Are there any other burning questions regarding this? I certainly agree with Jeff that it's an exciting project and could certainly bode well for providing that connection between Anacostia River Trail Network and the WBNA Trail. Well, thank you very much. Hearing no other questions or comments, let's go over to item 3 on the agenda. And this is acute skewed bicycle crossing angles of Purple Line tracks. I'm going to see if I can share my screen. And while I'm doing that, let's see. I'm going to, let's see, first it's a little hard for me to do more than one thing at a time. Can you guys see my screen?
No, we can't, Michael. Oh, now we can. Yes, now we do.
Okay. Okay, so just to give a little bit of background, I'm not sure if I can make this any larger. Yeah, let's see.
While you do that, I'll just point out that it's the lower oval that you want to focus on. I didn't do this. Mike Evans drew the red, but the lower red oval is where you would want to focus.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, so there's been concern for a while. Was brought to my attention by Mike Evans, who is a professor at the University of Maryland and a commuter. Not sure if Mike was able to join us this evening. He's in Scotland right now. He was going to attempt to stay on for this item, which it's 12:25 AM his time. But anyway, I can point with my cursor. Here are the plans for the eastbound bike lane at University Boulevard, crossing Campus Drive. And here is one of the tracks. And here is the other track. And this is known as an acutely skewed angle. And the concern here is with this design, as is, without any warnings or changes to that, cyclists can easily get their wheels caught in the flangeway of the tracks and fall and injure themselves. So Jim Titus, he's here, and has a concern with not just this particular location, but any other locations along the 16-mile Purple Line where they might have skewed crossings.
Yeah. Also, Michael, I think having warnings doesn't really help because it doesn't change the angle. So you got to have a solution, not just a warning.
Can I also chime in? You're going to have a lot of drunk people biking on that at like 2 a.m, like drunk college kids. So that makes it like extra dangerous.
So Jim here, I'll just chime in with some of the rest of the story as I have learned. First of all, in Montgomery County, there's another intersection where Carroll Avenue's bike lane would cross the Purple Line at a similar roughly 22.5-degree angle. And in Montgomery County, the bike coordinator, Matt Johnson, who many of you know, has been coming up with the design. The obvious thing, the SHA guidance says when you have this kind of problem, you put in you make the bike lane or bike trail do a zigzag. You veer a bit to the right, and then you come back to the left, and you can increase an angle by a certain amount. Maybe not perpendicular, maybe not even 60 degrees. You can definitely get it to 45. And in this case, in Carroll Avenue, Montgomery County came up with the obvious zigzag, which you can sort of, Michael's bringing this up, and you'll see the green does a little bit of a zigzag to get a nicer angle. That could be done here at Campus Drive as well. There's been some outreach from Michael Evans to please do something, although I think his focus was on a detour rather than the zigzag. I would say the zigzag is doable even on Campus Drive, and it would get some improvement, not perfect. But the focus has been that he pushed was instead to have a complete detour down Campus Drive, left on Adelphi, and back. And SHA responded, well, if DPW&T wants to do it, that's fine with us. Let us know. And of course, the dilemma there is, well, DPW&T isn't here. So I think what we're left with, as a group, what strikes me is the reasonable thing to do is, one, ask DPW&T to engage at least minimally, at least to some extent, to the extent that they can, and two, urge SHA, if they haven't done so, or even if they have done so, show us how much better a zigzag would get you, because it looks to me like you can get a 45-degree angle with a zigzag in that case, but it's not as easy as here.
Hey, Mike, the picture on Carroll Avenue shows the turn happening right on the track itself. If you're going to do a zigzag, you have to change the direction of the bicycle.
Could you bring that back? I don't recall that being the case. I recall the zigzag being in the road, but not in the not on the track. The turn being not on the track. Let's bring that up.
Well, just think about where the tire is going to be on that green bike lane you showed. Is that you're going to be turning right where the zigzag is. That's not going to work.
Well, you'll return on the
zigzag. This is only one of 3 design alternatives, and it is not decided yet. And just keep that in mind. It's not decided yet, and this is only one of 3 alternatives.
Yeah, and maybe we need to keep a big picture here, which is essentially at least they're trying to do something.
Well, they need to fix it with the best alternative, because if anybody goes down, they're going to be killed. They're going to go down right in a traffic lane.
Well, wait a minute, but why do you? I'm not seeing the turn over the track here. Maybe I'm not seeing something.
The track is shown in
purple.
These purple lines.
So your point is they're turning. Oh yeah, that turn still, it looks like it's over the track. I wonder whether that's just an imprecision in the.
No, it's not. It's because you need to turn the bicycle way before that, and you don't have room to do that because you'd have to swerve into the through lane.
Well, but swerving into the through lane isn't necessarily problematic. You've got a traffic light. They're not running a red light.
You mean you're going through when the cars next to you are not going through?
Well, just if the cars next to you are going straight and you're turning off to the right, you're going away from them, aren't you?
Well, you forgot how you turn to the right. You you lean to the left, and then you turn to the right. Well, that's how a bike turns. You don't turn like when you're driving a car.
Well,
okay. Bob, I'll just say
I mean this is standard knowledge.
Bob, your point is well taken with that. But just look at this as I think as Jim intended it to be, as a concept to say that SHA is aware of the consequences, and Montgomery DOT is working with them to look at alternatives so that cyclists would have a safer crossing.
They need to have a safe crossing, and there's no safer. I mean, this is a serious issue, and we're building a brand new train. And so they need to put in those rubber flanges and make a crossing that a bike can go across without falling. It's just like one mistake and you're dead. That's not acceptable design.
Yeah, and this has been brought to the attention of SHA at MVPAC as well. It would be interesting. I mean, we're hearing a broad perspective.
I think it needs to be brought to the attention of SHA at Mr. Wiedefeld's level. I mean, their lawyers don't want to have to deal with this.
The thing to understand, just, being empathetic with their situation, is MTA has tracks like this all over Baltimore. So there might be something fundamentally different between here and Baltimore, but but their initial reaction is, what they've said so far is you can't prevent every hazard. And so they try to minimize them to the extent that it's cost effective. But, you have tracks that are parallel to the roads. In any event, but let's look at the bigger picture. I'm
you
sure
you don't mark a green bike lane across when you're parallel to the tracks and mark it so somebody goes over to the right or goes over to the left across a parallel track. I mean, a person riding a bike can get your wheel caught in the tracks, but if you have a marked bikeway, it has to be safe. Otherwise, it's not a good idea to have the bike lane on the road.
So that's essentially, so now let's come back to what we have here. So what we have here is the 22.5 degree crossing at Campus Drive. So, let's stick with the big picture, because the plan wasn't for us to be designing it here. It's what's the way forward? Can ATAG somehow bring DPW&T to play a role similar to what Matt Johnson is doing in Montgomery County? I mean, you might not like what Matt is coming up, but compare it to what he was confronted with originally. Do we just simply say, SHA, please fix it? What do we do?
Jim, I've had a conversation with DPW&T this afternoon, and at this point, they didn't think they had a dog. Well, yeah, I'll say they didn't think they had a dog in this fight because Campus Drive is, if there was a detour, as Michael Evans had suggested, because Campus Drive is now a state highway, and the short section of Adelphi Road, which is DPW, is within the two intersections of state highways, and presumably state highways would have control over the design of Adelphi Road between Campus Drive and University Boulevard.
How about all the other crossings? And do they have a dog in the fight of, how about all the other crossings of the Purple Line?
Well, that's a question that I didn't quite discuss with them. I won't try to speak for DPW&T, but I did let them know that I would certainly make available conversations that we've had today, this evening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
in Maryland, we have a unified Department of Transportation at the state level. And there is no reason why the transit agency shouldn't know how to make a track crossing safe for a road with a bike lane on it. And SHA should know, and they should talk to each other, and they should figure it out, because if we want to be a state that promotes transit, then we need to solve this issue. I mean, in Portland and other smaller places, they figured out how to run bike lanes across bus stop accesses with pedestrians and all kinds of other things. And they don't allow bikeways and light rail lines to, to set up a poor crossing. So it's a state-run project. They need to get it together. And our DPW&T should be advocating on behalf of us and not talking about dogs in a fight. We're not talking about a dog fight.
Dogs in a fight was my term.
Well, I know, but still, it's like they gave you that impression that it wasn't their issue. It is their issue.
Well, thanks, Bob. Are there any other thoughts on this item, on the way to go forward? I know Jim has suggested trying to look at the whole 16-mile Purple Line segment for other acute skewed crossings.
I agree.
Any thoughts from anyone else who hasn't spoken on this topic?
Yes, this is Robin. I would like to know, what did they do in Baltimore? I worked in Baltimore for a number of years, and they do have light rail. They do have bikers. So what is the remedy that they applied there? And how would that remedy fit in this place? Also, I put in the chat that this is a very busy intersection. How are they managing the other busy intersections across the state? So I'm not so big on making this just an idea that they can't solve, but I'm looking at best practices, and I'm also looking at safety. I think it should be designed to ensure, for as much as possible, that they mitigated the dangers. And if it's successful in Baltimore with the light rail tracks and bikers, then I would presume that it would be successful over in College Park, even with a lot of, let's just say, happy college students after a winning game. Thank you for my comment.
Thank you, Rob. Any other comments, thoughts?
I don't have any good ideas, but I really appreciate your concerns for this. So I live on Cool Spring Road, and that intersection has always been terrifying. And I would really hope that we can make a good solution so that I can walk to campus and bike there without being scared, because we have a lot of people that just end up driving because it's just too scary.
Thank you, Anika. Well, it seems like maybe one suggestion is to try to get a meeting with SHA and MTA and DPW&T and any other possible parties. I know Peter Caponides was working on trying to get someone from MTA involved. But anyway, I was glad that he was able to come this evening. I'm not too sure if he's still here or not.
I am. I guess first and foremost, we want to look at best practices here.
Mhm.
One of the challenges that we have is that the design has been completed, and we're in the construction phase. So there are limitations involved in making modifications. I know there have been some backroom discussions, and so that's probably I don't have anything to offer because pardon the pun, this is not my wheelhouse. However, it isn't to say that it isn't of interest to me. It is, and I think one of the suggestions that was mentioned earlier from Mike Evans is I think that is something that is on the table in terms of redirecting the bikes if the situation is that there aren't any other alterations that can be made to the skew or to the way the treatment of the skew is being designed. So,
Well, I mean, you can look on the internet and you can see that they have treatments where they fill what they call the flangeway with a rubberized material that doesn't stop the train, but fills enough of the gap that a tire, even a skinny one, doesn't drop into a trough.
So if that is something that's feasible to include into the construction phase, that would be a good option to consider.
Yeah.
And Peter, there's an example of this in the chat. Yuri put an example of the filler, what it looks like in the chat.
Yes, thank you.
Of course,
thanks, Yuri.
The filler is, I would think, would be somewhat additive with improving the angle rather than just saying, oh, well, we're not going to improve the angle, we're going to do this instead. I would think you'd want to do a little bit of both, since the angle's not going to be 45 degrees. It's not even going to be 60. The question is, can you get it up to 45 or something like that? But Peter, what is, I know people have written you on the matter, and then MBPAC looked at it and went through that route. Is there another potential recipient for expression of the concern that hasn't heard the concern?
It's really MTA because it's their project. We are coordinating with MTA as a sister agency, and we've been involved in the review process and making comments and making adjustments as needed during maintenance of traffic. We haven't gotten to this. We haven't gotten to this point, obviously, of laying track down.
Well,
but I don't. But the long and the short of it is, I don't have a a good answer to offer you at this moment.
As to who we talk to, because all of us citizens assume that SHA stripes bike lanes and MTA would have no interest in where the bike lanes go. But I hear you saying MTA is deciding where to strike the bike lanes in this case.
Well, we have input, certainly. We do have input. I'm not going to, but it is, so it's MTA's project, and we're one of the, how do I put this? We're kind of in a supporting role in terms of reviewing the design plans, the signing pavement marking, lighting plans, signal plans. We're involved in that process. As far as the detail that we're discussing at this moment, that's something that kind of went beyond what was
Peter,
during the initial stage.
Not to cast blame on anyone, but if this is something that got approved by SHA staff as far as being adequate for meeting all the needs of the roadway users, then it might be time just to say, sorry, we missed this. It's been brought to our attention, and we need to revisit this, because if anything happens to somebody, if there is a lawsuit, they'll sue both SHA and MTA. So, I mean, I think you really want to look at best practices and look at the legal history and do the absolute best as you can.
Mm-hmm.
This is Michael. I have, thank you, Bob. I have a question, Peter, you may or may not be able to answer it, and then I'm going to offer a suggestion, just looking at the time, so we can get the other items in. My question is, would SHA have control given the closeness of the intersections of Maryland 193 and Campus Drive SHA facilities on that short section of Adelphi Road, or would DPW&T need to be involved if there was consideration of a detour route by way of Campus Drive and Adelphi Road back to University Boulevard East?
I believe we would. At least that little piece, because we maintain the traffic signals at that triangle.
Right.
So with that, SHA would probably take the lead if there was serious discussion of routing the cyclists by way of Campus Drive and Adelphi Road back to University Boulevard.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So here's my proposal. Since we're not going to solve this right now, Peter and others, would it be reasonable to try to look at some type of task force or some type of way that we can continue the conversation offline?
Sure. Like now, since we're talking about concerns along the entire alignment, would like that task force to also include the Montgomery County counterparts.
Okay, that sounds good. With that, I can go ahead and take the lead in following up with you, Peter, and members of ATAG. For anyone who would be interested in participating in an extended discussion of this, could you put that interest in the chat box? And I will go ahead and take the lead in working with you guys, SHA and others on this.
So Michael, you do have some comments in here, which we
Go
can
ahead,
just
Crystal.
note them. No, we can just note them as we go through the comments and stuff. But Dan B does have, he knows that we're short on time, but he does have a question and he has had his hand raised.
Okay, go ahead, Dan. Thank you, Crystal.
Yeah, thank you, Crystal. So appreciate the opportunity. I know we're short on time. Just want to echo a lot of what Bob said. Also wanted to highlight Seth's comment, which is it's been really hard as a resident to really piece together what recommendations have actually been planned for implementation with the Purple Line. So we have a lot of local municipalities, the state and the county all working on these things. Looking at this one example here, I'm a little confused by the conversation about DPW&T saying this isn't really kind of in their area. 2 of the 4 safe streets and roads for all projects are going to align with this intersection specifically. And so I'm having a hard time understanding how they wouldn't have a concern about making sure this crossing was safe. They're planning on adding sidewalks to the north for the Cool Springs project. And then they're also planning to add a shared use path on Adelphi Road, which would connect very close to here. So again, I guess more of an observation, but I think to Seth's point, I'd be curious if there's a way for people that are interested to get a little bit more information about what bike facilities are actually planned for alignment with the Purple Line in Prince George's County.
I think, Michael, is that something that will come out of this task force that you're working on? Is that something that can come out? I'm sorry.
Sure. Or, I can certainly take that comment separately to DPW&T.
Yeah, I was going to say we probably do need to have a conversation with them, Dan, based on your comments. And I see Bob shaking his head. And it could be that all of this, Michael's communication have been via email, but maybe if we show a visual, get our group together and start mentioning some of the things that we talked about today, that may be helpful to clarify some of the points that you mentioned.
Everyone, does that sound like a way forward?
Yeah.
Sounds
Yes.
good.
Yes.
Well, thank you, and Peter, again, thank you for coming. You've been very helpful with answering some questions that we were uncertain of, and we'll be in contact.
Very good.
Thank you. So our next item 3, status of shared use paths on the county's priority list to MDOT. Bob, care to take it away?
Okay, since I talked a lot, I'm going to run through this quickly. I'm not sure I understood the how you phrased it in the agenda, but I'm just going to give a quick update on the status, what I think the listeners are most concerned about in terms of trail projects and trail planning. The bridge for the WB&A trail over the Patuxent River is still on schedule to be completed in August. The Rhode Island Avenue Trolley Trail project extension from Farragut Street down to Armentrout Drive is still being the deadline for that. The end date for that is the end of the calendar year, and that's still what the SHA website says. I've looked at that. It seems like they're making good progress, and I haven't seen or heard anything that says that they've hit any snags. I've been focusing very heavily on working with our maintenance staff on resurfacing and fixing some issues that have been really long-standing that are creating some problems. And so we were able to get the Northwest branch at West Hyattsville resurfaced. We got the bridge that was out replaced, and then now we've resurfaced the trail in that section. There's 2 trails people don't know too much about. that fell into very bad disrepair, the Back Branch Trail, which runs southeast from near Watkins Regional Park, and the Folly Branch Trail, which runs northeast from the south end of the WB&A trail. We also resurfaced Northeast Branch Trail near the Wells Ice Rink Linson Pool area, and we resurfaced the Indian Creek Trail. So we'll be looking at how do we finish our center line striping with all the resurfacing. Some of the areas don't have center line stripes, and we've been putting white edge stripes on the trails as well. So I'd like to hear from anybody. You can just kind of put it in the chat. If you like the white edge striping that you see, if you find that helpful or not, if you see if it creates any problems. We haven't decided to do it everywhere, but I'm focusing on doing it in places where we have nighttime use and bike commuter use, so that you can see the edge of the trail in the dark. We have developers building a lot of trail as part of large developments, largely in the central and southern part of the county. And the Marlboro Ridge development has built a really nice new trail section that is in the upper Marlboro area. That you may want to go and explore. If you're interested in that, put it in the chat. I'll follow up with you. Also, there's a lot of development happening in the Brandywine area at the very southern end of the county. And we have potential for a network of trails to come together down there. There's still some gaps, but if you know people that live more to the southern part of the county, people have expressed to our planning board that they'd like more trails in that area. Well, it's not a transportation trail. We're going to be putting a loop trail around the new southern area aquatic and recreation center in the Brandywine area, which some people will like. Also, the Collington Branch Trail, there's a huge business park going in. Amazon's going to occupy part of it called the Capitol Business Park. And that's just off of 301. They'll be building a section of the Collington Branch Trail. And the city of Bowie is very interested in getting a grade separated crossing of Central Avenue, Maryland 214, which we've had a study up showing that that is something that we can do for a reasonable amount of money. I've been involved in trail planning efforts for the Walker Mill Regional Park and the Casca Regional Park, which have both we've done master plans for those regional parks for long-term park development. We're looking at both a lot of natural surface trail in those parks and some opportunities for paved trails. Peter Campanides has engaged me to talk about fixing the Sligo Creek Trail at Riggs Road. And we haven't talked recently about that. We had a good field meeting. I've given him some markups, so I'd like to follow up offline with Peter to see how that is going. And one of the main things that has occupied a lot of my time is developing the wayfinding sign plan for the Anacostia River Trail system. And I'm getting very close to giving the last round of comments to the consultants for that. That is going to be a major expenditure of funds, and it's going to be a major visual impact, promoting the trail system, making it a lot more visible on the roadway system and a lot more navigable for the trail users. And then finally, Yuri has brought to our attention problems with a developer-built trail that happened 20, 30 years ago in the Summerfield development. And so we're working with that property manager to have those trails rehabilitated. Those trails are going to be a part of the Central Avenue trail project, which follows the Blue Line corridor. And then the HOA that owned the Lake Arbor Golf Course, which is just east of Largo, was for a long time trying to get out from under the golf course, which became a financial failure. And Parks has acquired that, and we have plans to do some minor rehabilitation of the cart paths and have a very nice paved trail system there. And while that's kind of in the central part of the county, it will be outside the Beltway and increase access to trails for people who are in the more suburban settings of the county.
Thank you, Bob, for that. Jim, you asked for this item to be put on the agenda, and I think you had some specific projects that you wanted to get an update on in the county's priority letter.
Yes, well, that's correct. Yes, that's correct. The priority letter actually didn't have most of those trails, but other than the first one, the first item on the county priority letter for many years has been extending the WBNA trail from its current termination southwest into the District of Columbia. That has been the #1 priority. So I guess my question is, what is the status of this trail, which for all these years has been the #1 priority? Of course, we all know, most of us know, that MNC PPC asked SHA to extend the trail along Maryland 704, and that SHA said, yes, we will fund it. If the county will simply, or if you, MNC PPC, will simply agree to maintain it. Well, I saw that response. What did the county say? Where are we on this?
Well, Bob, do you want to respond to that kind of softball throw topic that you've been very interested in, or should I start?
Well, I will beg to differ a little bit that project has been at the top of the priority list. I think it's at the top of the priority list now because we've are in the midst of completing the extension of the trolley trail and the bridge over the Patuxent River for the WBNA. So the commission and the Parks Department, the Parks Department and the commission does not really have the capacity staff-wise and the expertise to be the lead agency in creating that trail. And our maintenance staff do not have the capacity to maintain a shared use path along a state highway and a roadway environment. So those issues are really the roadblocks is getting the County Department of Public Works or some other entity able to take some maintenance responsibility, and then also dealing with creating some capacity to design and implement those kinds of projects.
So just to be clear on this, so because I'm trying to understand how much of this is stuff that you know, and how much of this has sort of been communicated directly back to SHA? Is there a letter back to SHA saying we're working on it? And similarly, if your thoughts are that, you know, the Park Service, the Park Department requested the trail. SHA said, yes, we'll build it. So it sort of begs the question. The commission requested it. They said, we'll build it if you will maintain it. It presumably was no surprise that they would say that. It was no surprise that the commission can't maintain it. So did the commission then say, ask DPW&T to take this on? I'm trying to understand
the commission hasn't said anything in response to that.
Is it, so what is the solution? So they requested it. Well, why not? Why not say ask DPW&T if they could take it on?
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility.
I mean, my dilemma here is if MNCPPC just sort of says, oh no, this is too hard, we know they'll say no. The problem is, if nobody's asked them, it's kind of hard for any citizen to move the ball forward. It sort of seems like everybody's waiting for somebody else to do something, and meanwhile, we're leaving $3 million on the table that SHA had offered. I've checked it, even though it's an old letter, it still seems to be. So I'm just kind of get a sense of, could you all at least, I mean, was there ever a letter back to SHA on this that I just don't have, or was there never even a letter back to SHA?
I don't really know, because all of this took place before my time, and none of it got handed off to me. So I think with your interest in the project, that can help us pick the ball back up. It's been everything that the whole agency can do to focus on the other projects that, you know, were a priority. But it's very valid to begin looking at this one again.
So I think that thing clearly has your view on the record about why MNCPPC can't take on the maintenance, but we don't have DPW&T here to know actually what their position on this is. So yeah, would it be, if you all could ask them if they're able to maintain it, or I mean, if they were at this meeting, I would just ask them, but they're not here, and you know, I don't know how else to move this forward.
Jim,
yeah.
Jim, I have a suggestion with this. In the interest of time, we talked briefly about this. I'd like to propose another task force. I was at a meeting with Irv Beckert from DPW&T earlier this week, and he had actually proposed trying to look at legislation to change the responsibilities of SHA to take on projects that are within their right of way that aren't road projects for maintenance, sidewalks and so forth like that. So I would suggest that again, if people are interested in following up on this whole issue of maintenance of facilities after they're built that are along highways, shared use paths and sidewalks, please again let me know on the chat, and I will follow up on this. Jeff, you have your hand up.
Thanks, Michael. It was simply to say that I'd be interested in that sort of discussion on maintenance, since it seems like that's been a hang up for a lot of projects. So I'd like to work on that legislative strategy if you'd like that.
Well, thank you. Yes. Yeah, if you could just, you know, put that in the chat, and anyone else, Jim, certainly you had expressed earlier an interest in that type of thing as well.
Yeah, I would just like to add, because I'm on a cell phone and I can't put anything into a chat, sorry, that we got to get DPW&T on the record. I mean, before you start jumping to state legislation, if we need to figure out why this county alone among all counties can't can't maintain a trail along a state highway. I mean, the other counties aren't all demanding that SHA do it. And if we allow ourselves to fall into the position that we'll not fix the problem because we want the federal government or the state government to do it, while that might be an angle, and I don't dispute that, any such task force to be viable has to have the close participation of DPW&T, because frankly, the dysfunctionality that we have within the county is that we have two different agencies responsible for, or potentially for this, and there's no coordination.
Well,
And so-
DPW has expressed actually this idea of looking at legislation and other ways did come from a member of DPW&T at a public meeting recently.
Because what we need might be county legislation or a county executive order.
Mhm.
But
So I agree with
I'm
what
sorry. I
Michael
think
is.
this is a great conversation, but we have one more person who's here to present to us and to be respectful of everyone's time. I'm sorry. If you put your comments in the chat, Michael and I can follow up on those comments. But we do have another presentation presenter who has sat through our discussion. Thank you so much. So if we can go ahead with our last presentation on the Pope's Creek. It's just to be respectful of everyone's time.
thank you, Crystal. And with that, Nate, are you ready?
Yes, thank you.
And would you care to introduce yourself?
Yes,
Please.
hi, my name is Nate Selden. I'm a recent graduate of Catholic University of America. And this past year, I had the opportunity to complete a research project on the Pope's Creek Trail. And if I could share my screen, I have a short PowerPoint.
Go right ahead. Oops, I guess I have to stop sharing. Okay.
Let me try. Can you see the PowerPoint?
Not yet, but the screen did change.
Renee, how about you unshare? Yeah, and try sharing again.
Okay, here it is. I think this should work now.
Gotcha.
Awesome. So like I said before, I had the opportunity to do a research project on the Pope's Creek Rail Trail. In this presentation, we'll briefly discuss the background, a literature review where I looked at 2 case studies, some GIS maps I created, interviews I conducted, and finally a conclusion. So the Pope's Creek Rail Trail would be the conversion of the CXS rail line, which runs from Bowie, Maryland to the Morgantown coal plant. It's roughly 50.1 miles and passes through 8 Maryland communities. The rail line opened in 1873 and currently serves 5 customers. And the major customers are Aggregate Industries in La Plata and Cheney Enterprises in Waldorf. The coal plant at the end of the rail line was shut down in June 2022, and the entire railroad is planned to be decommissioned in 2027. This project in the Pope's Creek Rail Trail is very unique in the aspects that it has a lot of connectivity to different trails, including the WB&A Trail and the Indian Head Rail Trail. So the first case study I looked at was the Capital Trails Coalition's benefits of completing the Capital Trails network. And a couple of the main points that they highlighted were that the total economic impact of completing all the trails in the DC and surrounding counties would be $1.09 billion, which would support over 16,000 jobs over 25 years. There would also be $538 million in annual spending on soft and hard goods per year. And an interesting point was that the residential property values increased. Those within a fourth of a mile of the trail increased by 5%. And those within a half a mile would increase by 2%. And the next study I looked at was the W&OD economic study, which found a total economic impact of the trail was estimated to be between $14.4 and $21.6 million per year. And another interesting thing that they found was that non-locals would spend an estimated $74 per trip, which would equate to $1.8 million in spending in the local economy per 1,000 group trips. And this fueled over 34 full-time jobs. So then I looked at community places within and near the trail. And the first I looked at were bike stores and bike shops. There were 2 I found within 2 miles of the trail. And that was AME Cycles in Bowie, Maryland, and the Trek Bike Store in Waldorf, Maryland. Those are actually the only bike stores near the trail. And then I also looked at restaurants and bars. There were 20 locally owned restaurants and bars within 2 miles of the trail. And those are denoted with the blue squares on the right map. And then noted in the orange squares are grocery stores. And there were 10 grocery stores within 2 miles of the trail. And grocery stores and restaurants were mainly concentrated between Waldorf and White Plains. Like I mentioned prior, this trail is unique for the possibilities with connectivity to multiple trails, both existing and planned. As you can see on this map here, the Popes Creek Trail is laid on top of the Capitol Trails National Capitol Trail Network, planned and existing trails. And there's a lot of opportunities for connections with existing and planned. And then also in terms of Maryland as a whole, there's a lot of similar bike efforts going on. And as you can see down here, there's the Indian Head Rail Trail and then the 3 Notch Trail, which could both be potential connectivity points. The next part of the research was interviews. I conducted 4 interviews with local community members, and I asked them a series of questions. And one of the more interesting points raised was the non-traditional economic impact of the trail. So because the Popes Creek Rail Trail would not be through commercial use corridor, it would be spread out through the woods and farms. It would have a similar economic impact to the W&OD Trail, which I highlighted in earlier. And the Popes Creek Trail can become a destination trail with the trailhead Bowie experiencing noticeable economic impacts. And then for Charles County, because it's very tree covered, it could lead to home buyers wanting to move to this area because of the nice trail in their backyard. And Charles County could experience an economic impact through that. A few conclusions. Interest among community members is high. Those like stakeholders, however, there needs to be more support from the public, or it needs to be more the public needs to know about it more. Like I said before, it can experience similar economic benefits to the W&OD Trail. And there's also a lot of opportunities for business growth, especially with the bike and outdoor recreation stores, as there's only 2 on the trail currently. The trail also aligns with the 2040 Maryland Transportation Plan, which calls for an increase in connectivity and multi-use trails, an expansion of trail networks, and also reduced number of bike and pedestrian fatalities. It also aligns with the Prince George's County's countywide master plan of transportation and the Charles County's bicycle and pedestrian master plan, which again promote the safety and connectivity of multi-use trails. There's also future work that could be done, such as research to gauge the interests of the public and to spread awareness. This could be done through surveys and interviews. And also a feasibility study can examine the entire corridor and create plans and designs of access points and really map out the trail. I'd like to just thank my professor, Dr. K, and also Callie Crumpos for their help throughout this entire project. Here's some references, and thank you. I can answer any questions that you may have.
Nate, thank you very much for a succinct and exciting report. I was very impressed with it. Let's see, Jeff, did you have your hand up from before, or was?
No, I wanted to ask Nate a question, if that's okay.
Go right ahead.
So Nate, this is the first I've heard of your presentation, but thank you so much. And if you could put the links that are available, if any, to the public, I'd like to be able to share those on some local websites. And I also can, my email is further up in the chat, and I'd like to talk to you offline if you have time. In particular, there's some people in Bowie who I've talked to about this project, who maybe you have too, or maybe not. And I'd like to connect the dots as much as you're able. And congratulations on a wonderful project.
Yes, thank you.
Bob, did you have any follow-up words? I know you've been involved with this project for a while. You're on mute.
Yes, this was brought to my attention by some people in the planning department at Park and Planning Commission in Prince George's County, and I engage people in the city, the planner in Bowie, and there's a number of trail advocates who are active in the Capital Trails Coalition. We've had a number of meetings to track the issue. I've signed up so that if there is an abandonment application, I'll get a notification through Rails to Trails Conservancy. And the city of Bowie has had some kind of informal internal discussions, and seems to be very positive and interested in having that trail. The trail would solve a lot of problems for the Collington Branch Trail concept, which Bowie has made a central part of their overall bike and pedestrian plan, and is a priority project for parks as well. Much of it is in parkland. And so anyway, bottom line is I think it's a great opportunity. I think it would make a wonderful destination trail. It's great to see what you did, Nate, in terms of applying the multipliers that were developed by the Capital Trails Coalition in their economic impact study to this trail, and showing that it would have a lot of benefits. We have had contacts with bike and pedestrian advocates in Charles County, and there are also some of the advocates in Virginia who are really interested in having the nice bridge have a decent bikeway on it, so that we could connect to the Dahlgren rail trail in Northern Virginia on the other side of the Potomac. They have also been interested because this rail corridor leads to the nice bridge. So if that bridge had anything reasonable on it, we'd have a really nice connection to the south that probably would be much better than trying to go down 95 in the Potomac, the edge of the Potomac, which is really challenging. The one thing is that in Charles County, their equivalent of their MPO, or Council of Governments for the three counties down there, they're very interested in the corridor to use for light rail, but that would only be in Charles County and in the Brandywine area in Prince George's County, because their desire is to follow Route 5 to the Branch Avenue Metro Station. And the rail corridor goes straight north through Upper Marlboro to Old Town Bowie. So it would, even if there was light rail in Charles County, there still be considerable trail opportunity for Prince George's County. And it runs through a very beautiful part of the county, and would be a great destination trail, as well as providing a whole variety of connectivity that can be used for transportation. So I am hoping that we can start things off by having some kind of formal expression of the county's interest to the state, letting the state know that we want to make common cause at taking advantage of this opportunity if and when it comes along. And so we had in Bowie, we had a planner that Joe Meinert had hired, and he had experience with rail trails and railroads, and he was really tracking some of the details and doing good research on this. He took another job and moved away, and so we lost a good person there, but there's still interest in keeping track of this and taking advantage of it. I've had a number of discussions with the staff at Rails to Trails Conservancy, and I think that they will also be supportive once the opportunity really presents itself with a formal abandonment request by CSX.
Well, thank
I
you.
just had,
Go ahead, Nate.
I had one question. Sorry, I can't raise my hand on the cell phone. Can you say anything about the land tenure? Does the rail line, is that owned in fee simple? Is it fee simple determinable some places? Is it just an easement? I'm just wondering what really is the property interest that might be available.
I think it's mostly fee simple, but I don't know that for sure. We haven't done that level of investigation. But I think it's fee simple. When it got into Charles County, it branched in a lot of directions. And so the Indian Head Rail Trail that's already been created, that was a branch off of this corridor. The Three Notch Trail down in St. Mary's County, that was a branch of this rail corridor. There was actually a branch that went to what's called Pope's Creek, and that the whole division was called Pope's Creek, and that was a small little branch that went to the Potomac River, where Pope's Creek, a really small creek, empties into the river. That branch is being looked at and desired by Charles County as a really cool, beautiful, natural area to have a recreational trail into. It's not very long, but it's really special from an environmental point of view. So the county's Parks Department is kind of focused on that piece.
So what you're saying, you've had no cases where farmers would say, "Hey, this is my land now." In every case, nobody's challenged.
No, I don't know that for sure. Nobody's challenged anything yet because there's been no abandonment application.
Yeah, I think we could probably anticipate that might come just as a matter of course.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
I was looking at the Indian Head Trail would have been an indication possibly of what you have going on, but
yeah. Yuri, you have your hand up. You've been patient.
You, Michael. Yeah, I'm a little bit preemptively hoping for other business on the agenda. This is not for Nate, but also benefiting from Peter Campanitas being on the call, and I checked he's still on the call. I had a question on other business. Still blowing the horn for Central Prince George's, which hasn't been mentioned on this call, although Bob did mention a little bit of Central Avenue.
I mentioned
yeah, you did. I
don't get too provincial, Yuri.
Well, yeah, I got provincial because I actually went off camera earlier because I got from work late and I ate a McDonald's burger that I got by siding on the sidewalks of MDSHA property, and I wanted to ask Peter a question, not about the condition of the sidewalks. I already found the local maintenance guy's phone number. But Peter, I went to one of the PG Planning Board hearings for a local project, and one of the renders had a bicycle shoulder lane on Central Avenue inside the Beltway. And that is allegedly the rumor circulating in the professional traffic consultant community that that's the treatment. But I could not find any information anywhere on the publicly available, but it was in the render. And that's what the traffic consultant said is coming. Is that possible to confirm or deny the rumor that we're going to get a Central Avenue bike shoulder along the inside the Beltway?
That's a rumor.
Oh, okay.
So, we've been looking at trying to retrofit bike lanes, and one of the things that we've been evaluating was a road diet between the DC line and the Addison Shopping Center, which is just west of Addison Road. And then we were looking at the existing lane widths east of there, and there is the possibility of when a resurfacing project occurs to put in a bike lane in each direction because the lanes appear to be wide enough for that. But as far as east of Shady Glen Drive and Hill Road, that's a little bit more of a challenge. Because the lane width is it's a shade narrower along that section of the Beltway.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the renders were at Morgan Boulevard and the Rare Avenue intersection where we are here. And then Peter, maybe a follow-up question. Is there any plans for potential additional crossing of the MDSHA Beltway, I-495? I understand there's some DDI project coming our way on Arena Drive, and that's a separate conversation I'm working on. But I wanted to ask you, like, your big picture perspective. Will there be any additional opportunities for me to cross the Beltway without having to drive?
So when you say cross the Beltway at 214?
Oh, any other, I mean, right, 214, 210, frankly, anything other than Arena Medical Center Drive. Because right now, 214 bicycle may use right lane, but I understand that only goes up to the Beltway, at which point it becomes a 7, 8, 9 lanes in one direction. I mean, I don't even know how many lanes. The paint job is wiped out, but I do know that I personally go 75 miles an hour there in a 45 zone because other guys go 95 and I don't want to be rear-ended. So I went there once by bicycle and I was just glad that I didn't get killed that one time and I never went there again. But other than Arena Drive, there's no way to cross it. So just don't want to take too much time. From bird's eye perspective, is there any conversations, and if not, it's not, to add additional bicycle ways to cross the Beltway?
No, there isn't anything at this point.
Okay, thank you. No, that's it. Thank you. I appreciate being able to pick your brain live. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. No,
Yuri, I will say that in the strategic trails plan, we identified locations for improved beltway crossings, totally grade separated, some at locations where there are no ramps and connections to the beltway, so you don't have to deal with ramp crossings, and then also locations where there are ramps that need to be retrofitted and the location is a high demand location. So I can share with you some of that. That plan represents some discussion, but it was not formally adopted as a master plan by the planning board, so it doesn't carry a very authoritative weight, but it does represent initial thinking. I can share that with you.
Hi, Bob, thank you for that. We are past 8:30 and respecting everyone's time. I want to thank everyone for lively discussions. We've got signed up for 2 task forces to address some long discussed problems, maintenance and the acutely skewed angles. I'll follow up with folks on that. Thank you for coming, and our next meeting will be Monday, September 11th. And with that, want to wish everyone a great summer.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Bye.
Nice meeting.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.